This is the Personal Finance Show. You want to know about my early money memory?
Whoa. Slow down. You're not the host today, Beau.
Whoa.
Today, this is the Personal Finance Show with Kaila McMillan.
Okay.
So I have Beau Humphreys here today. And Beau, I'd like you to tell me your earliest money memory.
It all started with a Super Nintendo.
As most things do.
Right? So I wanted a Super Nintendo. It was 1991. We had a Nintendo, obviously, because we were kids. And Super Nintendo was only available in the States. It didn't come to Canada until 1992. It's the only thing I really wanted. It's my only memory of that time is like, I want a Super Nintendo. So I save up all my money, birthdays, Christmas, whatever. I don't even remember talking to my parents about money before that. Yeah, I'm sure I had a bank book or a savings book.
Did you have an allowance as a kid?
Yeah, well, my mom wrote a song about it called Gee, Mom, Can I Have a Dollar? Right? And so the lyrics are, they get a small allowance for doing things around the house. Sometimes they try to spend it. I've even seen them lend it. But when it comes to buying things, this is what they cry. And we would cry, Gee, Mom, can I have a dollar? Can I have a dime? She hears it all the time. That's basically all the lyrics of that song. So we would get an allowance, but apparently we would still ask her for money to buy things. So I don't even remember how much it was or why. But yeah, that's I guess my early allowance. Yeah, I don't remember ever wanting to buy anything until that Super Nintendo. So I saved up, and the only way to get it was to do a mail order thing from the States. And of course, this is a long time ago. This is 91. Shipping plus the exchange rate plus just the cost of the thing. I think it was $300. My parents were like, I mean, that doesn't really sound like a good use of your money. They were actually right. Like that's the whole thing about this is they were correct in their assessment. In that, like, because they had to help me. I was just turning 11 or just past 11, and I couldn't do this myself. I needed an adult.
And how did you have $300 to spend on a Super Nintendo at age 11?
Well, that's it. So birthdays, probably from the age of, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, whenever you start getting money. My grandparents would give me like, $25 or $50. I remember they would give me rolls of loonies, because there weren't any toonies then. And so like $25 here, $25 there, it adds up.
Okay, so you had saved up all of these gifts.
Apparently, all of
it must have been a lot to get to $300.
Yeah, it was all, I think it was all of the gifts. So, and that's why I don't think I really did much with my money before then. And so I think because I put so much weight on this, when they said, no, you can't do that, like, let's, hold on to the money and we'll figure out another thing. Maybe, and I don't remember this that well, but maybe I had told my friends, like, I'm getting a Super Nintendo and it's going to be awesome and then everybody can come over. Like, I don't remember that exactly, but it sounds right because otherwise, why would I rebel so much, right?
So you had one thing you wanted. You had saved every dime that you got towards this, and then when it comes time to purchase it, your parents say, no dice.
No dice. And I didn't even think, like, well, okay, maybe I can wait for it, or maybe it'll be, like, probably my reaction at the time was, I'm never going to get this, and it's the end of the world. Right?
Of course.
That was
when you're 11, that's how it feels.
Sure. So I totally rebelled, and it was all cash that I had, right? And my parents had no reason to suspect me of anything. I'm this model kid, right? And I just decided I'm going to go to the mall with my friends and spend it. And I think I'd liked lottery tickets up till then. Maybe I would get some for a birthday or, they're just fun things.
Kids love
do,
lottery tickets.
Right?
They're fun. They're flashy.
They're scratchy things. We went to the arcade. We spent money. Maybe we got some A&W. You know how much I love A&W.
Maybe played some pinball, do you think?
No, not there. Oh, yeah. There was probably pinball on the back.
Spoiler alert, Beau has a pinball addiction.
Pinball was later.
Got it. Okay.
At 12. I don't know how I decided, like, I'm going to buy some lottery tickets. Probably because I was allowed to buy lottery tickets at the mall. Not allowed legally, but the person didn't care. If I say I'm just getting some from my mom. It was illegal for kids to buy at this time. It was, but they hadn't done this whole, like, you got to show your ID, be under 18 thing.
Man, Northern Ontario is the Wild West. I can't believe you were buying lottery tickets at 11.
Well, yeah, 91, right? And so it's not like it was the 80s or the 70s. There was actual laws.
Those decades, it would have been totally fine.
It would have been like, yeah,
no
buy
problem.
all the lottery tickets you want. But I could do it. But you still have to say it was for your mom, right? Or for your parents or whatever, right? It wasn't for you. And they didn't care. They're just trying to sell, right? They probably get a bonus from OLG or something like that for selling.
For selling to kids.
I don't know. I think so. There must be incentives, right? Otherwise, you're selling this stuff. What's in it for you?
I mean, I think the incentive is it gets people in the store and they buy other things.
That's it. Okay, so that's the incentive then. Okay, so it's not monetary, but they must get something, no?
I don't know.
But that makes sense. Maybe that's all it is. That's all. They have something that people want, so they come in.
Yeah.
But what about the lottery kiosks that only sell? They're probably...
Those are paid for by the lottery.
Yeah, they must be. Do they still have those even? I think this is one of those.
Okay.
In any case, I would go up right in the middle of the mall, like right when you come in.
There's one in the Jackson Square Mall, actually.
Right there.
Here in
right?
Hamilton, we also have lottery kiosks in the mall.
Okay, so...
But I don't think they're selling to 11-year-olds.
I hope not, because, they really crack down on that stuff. And the penalties are huge. So I just started buying. In 1 week, just over 1 week, I spent that whole $300. We would just go every night to the mall. I'd say I'd go with my friends. And we would just spend like all the money. I was like living large, because that's a lot of money. And I remember winning a $50 jackpot on the scratch ticket. So like $2 scratch ticket, or one even. You win 50. It's like, wow, like I got so many ones or twos. I can win so many 50s. This is a business, right? I was thinking along those lines, like, this is great. I spent I'm not even thinking about that. I probably spent 150 by that point already. And with 50, I can buy so many more chances to win 50. It's like it pays for itself.
Great grade 6 level math, by the way.
Right? So like, yeah, exactly. So anyhow, I ended up blowing all of it. We had fun, but at the end I realized all my money was gone.
You said 1 week?
In a week.
In a week. So your first money memory is burning all of your savings.
In a week.
In a week.
Yeah, if you boil it down.
Wow.
But it was also the beginning of, I call it the beginning of my gambling addiction, which is why I call it a 20-year addiction, because it was from 11 to 31.
Wow. And
so after Christmas, maybe, my parents are like, hey, maybe we will let you get that. Maybe they thought I was upset or something. Maybe we'll let you get that, Super Nintendo, SNES. SNES, no. NES. SNES.
You're just trying to plug your band in the middle of this interview.
Saturday Night Superstars, available for weddings.
Wow.
And corporate events.
Shameless self-promotion here on the Personal Finance Show.
I knew it was SNS in there somewhere. So SNES, Super Nintendo Entertainment System. And I had to tell them, this is my first disappointment, I suppose. My first time disappointing my parents.
So they were willing to let you buy it with that money, thinking that money was still there.
Yeah, just say, let's look at the money. I just show it, why don't you take out your money? And I had to tell them, like, there's no money. And I don't really remember exactly how it went down, but I know they were disappointed, and I told them what happened. And then I think we all kind of thought it was an isolated incident.
So you all move on. You don't realize how alarming it is that this kid
has
chosen to cope with disappointment in this very big way.
I know. And of course, I think even at that time, no one, me, my parents, anyone watching would ever think that this could turn into something else. I'm 11, right? So it's not like you're, okay, let's go to therapy now.
Yeah.
It's not one of those things. Even if I still like lottery tickets, it wasn't a big deal. Just as long as I wasn't spending all my money, I think people thought it was harmless.
Right. And you don't want to make a big thing out of something.
That's right.
You don't want to traumatize the kid by overreacting to his first mistake.
And I don't want to do that either with our kid who we're watching on a video monitor.
Yeah,
right
he's sleeping, and I don't want to, make that into a bigger thing.
But I know, if he makes a mistake, blah.
We'll edit this out later.
We'll see how much it gets edited out. Though you're the host, I'm still the editor.
Oh dear.
Oh dear. Oh boy.
So let's fast forward. So you've started this addiction at age 11 with a big disappointment. So something difficult has happened. You've coped with it with money, with gambling. So fast forward, what's the next big event on this trajectory?
So next big event would have to be when I'm 18.
Okay.
Because between 11 and 18, I didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right. And I believe I would just spend it either on lottery tickets if I could find them, or just spend it on food or, whatever. There wasn't ever enough. And I'd put some away, but it was never there was never anything significant there. And
so when's the next time you had enough money to really have a problem then?
Well, so when I turned 18, I was legally allowed to gamble. And in the back of my mind was, well, I'm going to figure out a way to gamble, because I like gambling still. It never went away. I like gambling. We played poker for quarters. I asked my friend at the bowling alley to collect old lottery tickets for me. They were scratched, and I would scratch the rest of them off. That's probably the weirdest thing of all of this. I don't even know why he did that.
Wait, that was in high school when you were a teen?
Yeah, he got a kick out of it, I think, by bringing me these old lottery tickets. I'm like, can you get those to me? I wanted to study them like it was some kind of a game.
Well,
I would learn more.
You're aware that there's that part in the barcode that you can scratch?
That didn't necessarily exist at the time, but there were parts. There was something you could scratch, but nobody knew how to read it.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, there's that. But I know what you mean now. Yeah. Be a little.
There was a quick way to find out if a card was losing.
But even if they tried to tell me that, I would still wanted. I still wanted to do. I was curious. I wanted to know more about gambling. The more I could learn, the more that I could master this thing.
So you had this taste for gambling.
Oh, it just kept building.
And so as soon as you were 18, the floodgates were open.
Yeah. So I had a credit card for $500, I believe, was connected to my student line of credit.
When you're 18 is also when you can get a credit card.
Yes, but this one was specifically connected to my student line of credit that I got for school. So this was just before school. We applied for the student line of credit. I get a MasterCard for $500 along with it, just for whatever spending, right? So I can use it at places you can't use a line of credit, to buy dinner or whatever.
And were you going to school at home, or were you going away to school?
No, I was just about to go away, but I had the semester off before, so I was just getting ready to go and getting everything ready. And, I stumbled onto a prototype of the online casinos that are out there now. It was good, but it wasn't slick or anything.
What year was this?
This was 1999. Okay. So I was
early .com days.
Yeah, 18, and I was about to turn 19 when I went to school in September. And so 18, old enough to gamble, not old enough to drink. And in Ontario anyway, and it still is that way. I think I spent $300 or something on that card, or I tried it out. My parents kind of caught me. I think there's only one computer.
So this is before you left for school?
Before I left. So there's only one computer in the house, and I think they caught on to what I was doing, and I said, okay, no, I won't do it anymore, right?
Okay. So before you've even left for school, you've spent $300 on what must be extremely slow dial-up internet gambling.
Okay, this is 1999, so we had, what did we have? It was
if you had high speed in Timmins and we were still doing dial-up in
that's a good point. Maybe
Southern
I
Ontario,
had
that's
fast.
pretty funny.
Was it 56K modem? Maybe, because when I went to university, I had high speed in the residence. So that's
when you came to the civilization of Southern Ontario.
That's right. That's right. No longer sleds and igloos.
Sorry, Northern Ontario listeners.
It's okay. We all left. Don't worry about it, including my parents. So my parents wanting me to, have money for emergencies, give me a credit card, a secondary credit card in their account as backup when I leave, right? Only for emergencies. I'm a responsible guy in all this, right? So there's no reason for anyone to not trust me. I get good grades, Ontario Scholar, whatever. I'm accompanying people in the music festival and the piano. I'm a smart kid. I'm a good kid, right? I'm not doing anything I don't go out. Sure, I was drinking, but I'm not a bad kid.
Mm-hmm.
So why would my parents think, oh, can't give him a $5,000 backup credit card? No, he knows he'll be in trouble if he uses it for something that's not important.
Right, and maybe you're hitting on something here because parents often will provide kids going away to school with that sort of thing. But how often are kids getting financial education to go along with this huge responsibility?
But they told me. They told me what it was for.
But that doesn't mean that you have the skills yet to deal with money.
Yeah.
Especially in your case because you are wired towards coping with money. But I think it's a common story that kids going away to school are given these huge amounts of money and don't yet know how to manage it.
That's right. No, that's so common, isn't it? Just the student loans by themselves.
Yeah. Or credit cards from their parents. That's a common story.
Too. And the credit cards from their parents, at least the parents can see that. Student loans, only the student sees the bill, right?
Yeah.
Or no, the student doesn't see, nobody sees the bill. You just get money.
You just run out of money.
And then the student has to decide what to do. Yeah, like, should we change the system? Like, why are we giving kids money when...
Without the lessons to go along with it, which I know financial education is a passion of yours, Beau.
Yes. It's...
For younger kids.
Yeah, it is.
And teens.
But, what do we do, right? We want to teach them independence. Maybe, what we do is we do what a couple of my podcast guests have done, and start programs for kids early about financial literacy.
And all through high school. So,
yes.
Sorry, I interrupted you. So you are going away to school. You have a $5,000 credit card as well as your $500 student line of credit.
That's right. Card. Plus my student line of credit, which has room on it.
And you're going how far from home for school?
I'm going to London, Ontario. So it's about 800, probably 1,000 kilometers.
So you are going far away from home. You're 18 years old. This sounds like things are going to go great. Tell us how it goes for you.
So, I get to university and I realize one of my triggers is being uncomfortable and being powerless, right? Which I was in the early time when I couldn't buy the Super Nintendo. Mm-hmm. And, that's the epitome of going to university. Yep. You don't know what's going on. Everything's hard. Everything's new. You're trying to cope. Everybody needs to cope, I think, when they go away into something new. Some people have healthy coping mechanisms like communication, discussion, talking about how they feel with friends, things like that.
Some breathing exercises, perhaps.
Or just that, meditation, the other real tools. But like the basic ones are just talking about how you feel and not hiding it away and, gambling your face off. I realized that I had all this money. And on top of that, gambling websites just exploded when I got to university. So they were all over the place. So there's these, sign-up bonuses and matching bonuses and all this stuff, all this enticing stuff for me, right? I'm like, well, if I put $1,000 in, I get $1,000 free, 100%
Making
return.
Money. There you go.
So this is also the time that I started to learn about all these conditions, right, that the casinos had for if you get a matching bonus. Well, you have to apparently gamble that $1,000 over like 10, 15, 30 times, whatever the rate was, before you can even touch that extra money. And so here I am thinking, okay, well, maybe there's a condition. Maybe I have to hold on to it for a bit, and then I can cash it all out. Well, at least, if I gamble the first 1,000, I have the other 1,000 left. So things like that. Things were very enticing to me. It was all very curiosity-based.
So how often are you gambling at this point?
So it probably was a couple months in, once I started to figure out, get into the residence life, and then I'm gambling because I can't handle classes or whatever it is, or, just social interactions. My brother and I were touring, I think, at the time. Maybe we hadn't started yet.
So you're in a band that's touring on weekends.
I think we were touring at that point. I didn't have my piano. It was the first time I'm without a piano, so I don't even have that, which is
you don't have music
soothing.
as a coping mechanism.
I don't. And so I just feel like totally removed. And I think that was a huge trigger for me. So I'm gambling. I'm going to classes. Sometimes I'm not going to classes. I'm gambling all the time. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just gamble whenever I can. And the funny thing is, I'm winning enough to get checks mailed to me. But of course, immediately I gamble that away.
Right.
So everyone's noticing that I'm gambling. And then I'm like, yeah, but look, I got this $2,500 check in the mail, couriered to me, right? Little they know I'm probably 3,000 in the hole already. Anyway, the long story short, eventually I just gamble that whole 5,000 away. And
so you max out your parents' credit card.
I have to tell them, or they're going to find out. It's going to come to light.
They're going to get letters and statements.
That's right. So they're going to get their statement, and they're going to see probably 100 transactions. What is happening? And they're going to be furious. And they were. But when there's enough transactions like this, it gets you get past the point of being like upset about it, and then you get to be concerned.
Yeah, that's a concerning thing.
So they were concerned, and we talked about it, and they said, okay, we'll cover this. you just have to go see a counselor. And that was sort of the beginning of my gambling therapy, even though it really wasn't.
That was your first contact with mental health services.
That's right.
In this journey.
That's right. But it wasn't anyone specialized in gambling, because it was just at the university. But I didn't even know then, like, where to go. That's why I talk about this stuff a lot. It's because I want people to know exactly where to go and what to do. Because
so where would, if somebody came to you and they felt they needed to access help with their gambling,
yeah,
from a mental health perspective, where would you send them?
Well, if they were in the Toronto area at all, I would send them to the Canadian Association of Mental Health, CAMH. CAMH has a problem gambling division, specifically with gambling addiction counselors. And so they know exactly what's going on there, and it's a great program. Then you can just go in and talk to somebody. If it's severe, is a program in Windsor, like a boot camp, like one of those things you see on TV. It's like rehab,
like an inpatient rehab.
That's right. Yeah, if
setting
it's
in Windsor.
If you basically just gambled away 3 mortgages, or you're ruining your life and other people's lives, and maybe especially if you're not even aware or self-aware, like you think everything's cool, it's my money, I can gamble it away, right? That's serious.
So some people with a severe enough problem might choose or be sent to inpatient rehab.
Yeah,
I'm sure they would have to choose it.
Well, I've seen them come and go, right? I think you have to make the choice yourself, but also you have to be recommended by problem gambling counselors of some kind in Ontario. The rest of Canada, there are addiction centers all over the place. It's not hard to find them if you're looking. They do tend to have outreach programs going on, and they have advertising and connections with different associations and stuff. So it's just a matter of like, how do I even look, or like, is there a place if no one's ever talked to you about it, right?
Yeah.
So for me, they just thought that I was depressed,
right?
And I was gambling because of that. So they prescribed me antidepressants.
Okay. And do you think that was appropriate? Are you happy with how that went?
Probably not. I mean, I kept gambling. I had multiple relapses over the years until I actually figured it out. So maybe that wasn't the answer.
Right. So yeah, let's jump ahead in this story. So you have a gambling problem that starts to show itself right when you're moving out on your own. You're 18, turning 19.
Yeah.
You're going to university. You're starting to interact with mental health services who think that it's an underlying depression. That's your gambling problem. And the years go by. Things don't really get better. You're having relapses, kind of starts and stops. So what's the next stop on this wild ride that we're on? Yeah,
so throughout university, I just was whatever, gambling here and there, trying to make it through. I apparently made it through university. I got my degree. All right. It was tough. I kept getting more and more in debt, right? I mean, school debt, and then I had all this debt. And
are your parents still bailing you out at this point?
It's probably little bits here and there. So I'm just doing maybe $300, $600 here and there, just on occasion. Mm-hmm. But nothing was really changing in my experience. We thought, give my credit cards to my brother, mm-hmm. or get rid of the credit cards, but then I need them to live and have somebody look after my bank account, but maybe somebody would look at it for a bit and then nothing would happen.
So nothing's really addressing the underlying problem here.
No.
And you are like many people in their 20s. You have your degree, you're starting to work, but you're not doing well financially at this point. You're in debt, you're not thriving, you're not building the equity that you hope to build at this point in your life.
I would take whatever credit cards would come to me, and I would use these balance transfer promos. So 6 months, no interest, transfer whatever you got, 10 grand over to this. You don't pay any interest for 6 months. I'm like, great.
I mean, that does seem like a good idea. If you're given everything else, any relief from the insane interest of credit cards seems like a worthwhile thing.
Yeah, it was.
It's not going to solve the problem.
It's not going to solve the problem. Yeah. That's it, right? But it did give me temporary relief, which is how I was able to sort of keep myself afloat. And then I did get a job in Toronto. I moved to Toronto, got a job. My parents, again, they're helping me out this whole time. I don't know what I would have done. And it's probably a good time to talk about privilege, in that without my parents helping me with this or that, with the random relapses, I don't even know where I would be.
Right, because while you are struggling with debt, it's not like you ever ended up in a really bad place. You always had somewhere to live. You had food to eat.
That's right.
You never had to go to a payday loan place.
No, I never did. And you think that I would have just to get some extra money.
Yeah.
There's some stories later where I probably should have instead of doing what I did do. So really, I'm just staying afloat.
And that's in part because of where you come from and coming from an upper middle class family and being able to keep it together, even though you're living well beyond your means because of the gambling.
Yes. And so you think, okay, well, maybe I'll just have this problem and it'll be fine. But I figured out a way to make it worse.
Okay.
So so I'm 25 and I want to go to on a trip for my birthday, right? 25th birthday. This one-day cruise from Vancouver, sails under the Golden Gate Bridge. Awesome. And I think I'd been pretty okay with the gambling. I wasn't really happy with my life. I wasn't happy with the job that I was in, just starting out, in debt. Don't really know what's going on with my future. It's like that kind of thing. It's like
quarter life crisis. It's a classic time.
I guess that's normal for everybody, right? Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I was probably in a very similar position to anybody else. The main difference being I have this vice that can be quite costly. And turns out this one night, 2-day cruise had a casino on it. And I guess I just lost it, right? I went in and I'm like, I'm just going to try it for a bit or whatever.
Were you on this trip alone?
Yeah, I did most everything alone. I couldn't make any connections with people because of this problem that I had, right? I'm not going to open myself up because if I open myself up, then people can see the gambler
and how bad things really are. I'm able to keep it all at bay, right? So we got a lonely dude on a boat with nothing to do, no one to talk to, and there's a casino.
And whose main trigger is uncomfortable new experiences, apparently. So it was the worst idea, and I just, I think I spent $1,000 or something, and then I'm like, well, I'm in this. And I was in San Francisco. It was great. I was having a good time, but all I could think about was gambling. It's just the worst, right? And I just remember getting back home to Toronto. I got off the plane and I went and bought like $200 worth of lottery tickets.
Oh my God.
And then it just kind of ballooned from there. I rediscovered all of the online casinos, started playing games that I never even did, like online poker. And the culmination of this was, it was a couple of months because it was from September, my birthday. The end of it was in November when I got my job, my 6-year job at MLSE, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. But at the same time as I was interviewing for that job, I was gambling my face off, like gambling all the time online. And I discovered this video poker thing where you could play 50 hands at a time.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but the craziest thing about that was the potential for jackpot. And of course, you think of that about everything. Slot machines, they'll have potential for jackpot. But I actually hit this jackpot. That's the thing. So if you get all 50 hands, like a royal flush or whatever, you get the jackpot. And I won $20,000.
Oh my God.
So I won $20,000, right?
This should solve all your problems.
And that's what I thought. That's the best part about this terrible experience is that I still had in my head that if I hit the jackpot, I'll be able to solve the problems that I created by losing all of my money. But what happened is I realized that it wasn't going to solve it. I won $20,000 and I just realized I want to gamble it all.
Oh
I want to try to make $200,000 or $1 million. Anyway, it was never going to end, right? It was kind of it's the best and the worst day of my life because the best is because I was able to sort of realize gambling is not going to get me out of this. I got to do something else. I got to figure out whatever it is.
Right.
But also, I just lost all of my money that I had, plus the money I made, plus any money in the bank that I had to try to get that back.
Oh my God.
And I didn't have enough money to pay my rent. And I just got this job. and I signed the contract, and I'm starting this new job. It pays me a little bit more, but nothing close. So I had to go to my close friend and tell him that I was gambling again and ask him if he could lend me money to pay my rent.
And I'm sure this is a friend who had seen a lot of gambling before, had seen it all, had probably lent you money in the past.
He was furious. He was really upset with me, and I said, I'll give you all my codes to my bank accounts and my credit cards so you can see everything, right? Because I couldn't stand disappointing him again. And so he did. He'll look. I said, look in periodically, like just so I know that, so I'll feel safe.
It helps you be accountable to someone.
But after a while, it's just everything seems okay.
So you get out of this terrible relapse.
I get out of it, but I'm in worse debt than I ever have
right.
been.
So you get out of your tight spot with the help of your friend. So is this when you connect back with KMH again? Or have you been connected with them all
along? I think it's important for me to reconnect at this point.
Yeah.
I think I was trying to go to groups, but I was like, this isn't good for me. Going to see my counselor. Yeah, it's just it's a long process, You go through all this stuff, but I think this really just lit the fire. Like, I got to figure out what it is, like, more in depth. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the time that I started to take advantage of the programs that KMH, they had a cognitive behavioral therapy program and an 8-week mindfulness course. So I started doing all of these things, trying to improve myself. It was still a couple more years before I kind of figured it out. I was in my new job, and I was focusing on that. I think I had to shed a lot of bad things, or really dig deep before I figured out exactly what was wrong.
So what was the big breakthrough?
So after I shed a bunch of negativity and just basically was miserable for another couple of years, I got rid of this thing. I got rid of that. I'm running and taking care of myself. The boss that I wasn't getting along with is gone. But why do I still feel like there's something totally wrong with me? Mm-hmm. And then I just started Googling more and exploring more, and I really just stumbled across attention deficit disorder. I guess ADHD is the official term, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, but I never used the H because I never was hyperactive. It's, maybe people would disagree. But so I call it ADD, attention deficit disorder, because it was a deficit in my attention, and it made me unable to do things. So I took this test online. I thought, hey, this looks kind of really close to what I have. And I mentioned it to my gambling counselor, and he's not a psychiatrist, right? So he's not a doctor, so he doesn't even think of medication. His job was to, if I'm on medication, fine, he acknowledges it, but he's trying to dig deep into what's causing this, right? But we never even thought about that it's a disconnect in my brain somehow. And so they did the official test, and she's like, yeah, you got this. Here's some medication. Let's try this. And it just changed everything, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about getting treatment for ADD is the treatment tends to work well and fast when it does work. So that's
what you got.
Life-changing, yeah.
It was life-changing. I was just so stuck and paralyzed by fear of things and a fear of doing anything, because then when I would do stuff, it would take forever, or I would just get so, my brain would just get so full, and it just made me feel miserable to work hard. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard to work hard. Yeah, sure. It's hard to focus on things. Everybody has a long day and they get all stressed out, and it's difficult, right? That's, but for me, it was excruciating. Yeah. That's the way that I describe it. It's like I couldn't even do it. It's like every day, it's the equivalent of you having to, cut off your finger to get work done. Just to give somebody a comparison of to be able to maybe understand how I felt about doing regular daily work, or going out and trying something new, or making new friends, or anything that was about needing my energy to get something done or accomplish something. Because I didn't have any of it. It's a deficit.
Yeah.
There's something missing in me, and the medication kind of bridged that gap.
That's right. And so that for you was when this whole gambling thing started to turn around. You started to really work at the root causes of
That's right.
and what had been bothering you.
And so, yeah, I figured out. So it was the ADD. I felt like a million times better. But now I'm looking at this debt that I have, and it's ballooned because I'm done with all of the balance transfers. I got to face this. I have like somewhere between $600 and $1,000 a month in payments to credit cards,
which are only going to get astronomically larger because the high. Are you paying those 20% interest rates like most
these
credit
are all
cards
regular
have?
credit cards.
It's insane.
I couldn't qualify for any sort of lower rates or loans. Nobody would give me those, right?
Of course.
Not at this point. And I'm like, okay, what are my options? Now that I'm thinking clearly, and now that I'm like, okay, because when you think about it, if you try to figure out a debt solution for something and you're still in it, it's almost pointless because you're figuring out your debt, you're paying it off, and then you're just going to fill it up again because that's what had been happening for the last 5-10 years. So I felt like I was in a place where I could explore, like start crawling out of this debt and be sort of okay. Like I was on my way to getting the gambling under control. It was still there. It was still in my head. I can't say that the medication immediately cured me, or the behavioral therapy or the mindfulness. That all of these are just tools to help me get out of this rut that I was in, and my comfort zone was gambling.
Right.
So if anything bad happened, I would still go there. So I started looking into what are my options to crawl out of this debt hole that I was in. Well, I found bankruptcy. I think I have to go bankrupt.
Right.
Because there's no way, like you said, it would probably take me like 300 years to pay off the minimum payments.
Yeah.
If that, or never. I just Googled it, I guess. The one that came up was Hoyes Michaelos. And it said...
and what is Hoyes
Sorry,
Michaelos?
so Hoyes Michaelos is a bankruptcy trustee company. Okay. So it's a company they're called Insolvency Trustees now. Doug Hoyes is the founder and Ted Michaelos.
Previous podcast guest
here
on the Personal Finance Show.
And I've been on Doug's podcast as well. So
clearly you and Doug are good pals at this point. He was able to help you out of this situation you were in.
The proof, you're right. Yeah, the proof that I got out of this is that Doug was on the show. If Doug messed it all up for me, then yeah.
You'd be like, no.
And it wasn't Doug directly. It was just one of his employees, Sandra. But it was a website that said, hey, if there's an alternative to bankruptcy in Canada. It's called the Consumer Proposal. You go to your creditors, or we all go to your creditors as insolvency trustees, bankruptcy trustees, and we say, hey, creditors, if you go bankrupt, you're going to get nothing, zero. So let's propose that we pay you $15,000 out of this $40,000, and generally the creditors accept that because they don't want to get zero. And they're usually big companies, and they have provisions for this kind of loss. So for me, it's a tremendous life-crushing amount of debt. For them, it's just a number. It's not going to ruin their company or anything. They planned for this. So that's what we did. 40,000 down to 15. Did the proposal. My credit rating was ruined.
Yeah.
Not that I really wanted it anyway.
Well, that's kind of a blessing because now you no longer have access to credit cards.
Exactly. I don't want it. Credit was how I bought everything. And now there's a story later where I was able to circumvent that even. But it kind of saved my life going through this proposal because all the interest stops. It was $300 a month for the next 50 months. So 4 years plus 2 months. And then the $15,000 would be paid off. And I would be debt-free. All of my debts were cleared off. And then the 3 years after that, it gets cleared from your credit report, and your credit rating goes back up.
As opposed to 7 years with bankruptcy?
Well, because it takes 4 years plus 2 months to pay off the proposal. Meanwhile, with bankruptcy, it's like a year to 21 months.
Okay, so it's still a 7-year.
It's a very similar time span.
Interesting.
So, but because bankruptcy gets all cleared right away, you don't have to pay it off for 4 years.
I see.
So they kind of add up to the same.
Okay, that's interesting.
Give or take, right? It's I don't know if it's 7 years from the day you file bankruptcy, because then it would be pretty much exactly the same.
And how old are you when you do this consumer proposal?
My credit rating was cleared in August 2015. So I was about 27, 28, depending on when my birthday is. It's in September, as we said earlier. So it's 28. So by 35, my credit rating was cleared.
So you had essentially a 10 solid year period of struggling with this from the time you're 18 to 28.
Basically, yeah. The way that I say that it was 20 years because I started when I was 11.
And there were other relapses,
but
of course.
The active struggling, you're right.
Was
it's
a nice
basically decade. Half of that was actively in the addiction.
Yeah.
And really, I guess trying to crawl out of it. Yeah.
So so this is a huge moment. You're walking out of this really dark time, and so walk us through a little bit after this, because now you're in a scenario where you're living without credit for an extended period of time. And I think this is really interesting because most of us don't live without credit. Most of us don't have to think about things like cash flow, making sure you have exactly enough money in your bank account to make those larger purchases.
That's right.
You know, if I want to make a big purchase, I just do it and then I pay off my credit card later. You know, and I don't carry a balance on my credit card, but I never have to think about when my paycheck is timed to my large purchases. And so you went through a long period of time where if you didn't have exactly enough money in your bank, you couldn't pay rent or you couldn't
I just
buy
couldn't
dinner.
Do it.
And so this is an old-fashioned way of life that most of us don't have to live. So how did you manage that? Because that's honestly, it's a foreign concept for most of us now.
Yeah, and this is the foundation for my personal finance coaching, really. It's kind of crazy. You go through this, you're forced to do this, and then I realized, this is kind of, you shouldn't spend money that you don't have.
What a concept.
What a concept. And then people wonder, why they're in trouble. Like my gambling addiction is very, I guess it's a unique thing. There are other addictions, and you can compare yourself to that. If you're not a gambling addict, maybe you have another similar problem. But it's not really about being able to relate to my addiction. It's being able to understand what I learned from going through this, that you can crawl out of debt. You can, if you figure out your problem, you got to figure that out. You can get out of debt, right? So, the first step was I had to make sure that I could pay rent every month. What I started doing was this very detailed spreadsheet.
Of course you did.
Spreadsheet.
This is such an accountant type of solution.
Well, just think about it. I have to know where all the money is. So any time that I spend money in any kind of capacity, I have to list it. And it comes out of my balance. So let's just say I have $5,000 to start with. That's all I got. There's no more coming, other than a paycheck, right? So what do I need to spend in the not even before the next paycheck, because maybe I need to buy something big later. It's like, let's do the year. Let's do 6 months. Try to project what all my costs are. Am I ever going to get negative? If I'm ever negative anywhere along that line in the next year, that means there's something that I'm doing that is beyond my means.
That's right
now.
And I remember this when we first met, that you had this spreadsheet, and when I don't remember why you had it out. Maybe when we were buying plane tickets to go on our trip to France, as we did early on when we met each other, and you were making sure that it never went into the red
ever.
And
that's
a pretty labor-intensive way of managing your costs.
Yeah, sure.
But you certainly developed some pretty good ideas of how to make sure that you always stayed in the positive.
Yeah, well, that's the way to make sure that I'm not putting myself at risk. Now, what you can do is just look at your bank account and make sure you have money in there. But, a simple spreadsheet that has your balance, has what your specific fixed costs are for this next 2-week period or the month, let's say, before you get new money. will tell you that, okay, now I do have this much money left over to spend if I want to spend it. But I was focused at this point on, well, first of all, my $300 a month was being taken out of this, plus my rent. And then anything else, I'm trying to rebuild my money. I never had saving. If you think about it, I might have had savings or an RRSP account at one point, but that was always offset by credit card debt. So it was really kind of pointless. And I cashed all that stuff out, and I had to liquidate most things anyway for the proposal. I'm just starting from scratch. And this is positive for me, right? It's like you got to go through something sometimes to realize the positivity of this. And it's unbelievable to me that I can build this nest egg up while paying off this debt. And I know this debt is eventually going to be gone. You never know that when it's credit cards and you keep spending. If I can't get any more debt, then I know the debt's going to go away. That's kind of a revolutionary thing for most people because that doesn't exist. Right. Revolving credit, credit cards and lines of credit, they're revolving. You can reaccess the credit all the time. Nobody knows the experience of paying something off in full that's large and then starting over again.
What a relief that must have been to you after feeling like you couldn't predict your debt. You couldn't plan for the future. And now suddenly you can start building a future for the first time.
I don't even know what my future is like. I always say I thought I was going to live in my parents' basement, and there was guys in my gambling group who they were in their 50s and 60s and they would get an allowance from their spouse. Oh my God. That's the only way they could live. Here's enough money to get your coffee from Tim Hortons on your way to work. And, if you need anything else, well, forget that. And then you come home, it was a miserable life for them because they never addressed the problem. And all they did was try to put these stopgap measures in place.
Which are very useful in the short term. I mean, for you not having credit for 7 years, that was a stopgap, but it was enough for changes to happen for you. But
it didn't stop me from gambling again, right? So there was a couple more times when I gambled, because years went by and I was building up savings, and I don't have credit. I have a $500 secured credit card from People's Trust in British Columbia, where you send them $500, they put it in a GIC, and then they give you a credit card.
Yeah,
and they pay it back to you with interest later on. But $500 is not going to get me anywhere with gambling. Mm-hmm. There was, I think, 2 or 3 more relapses in that 7-year period, right? Like, I technically did put the stop on the debt at 28, but it still took until I was 31. Not 7-year period, I guess a 3-year period. Because I technically, my last gambling incident or relapse was when I was 30, like just before I was 31. Mm-hmm. And June of 2011. Mm-hmm. That's and we just made a video about that.
That's right.
So that was terrible. But what I say to people is, you'll know when it's your last one. I felt like I knew that it was. You can't just get rid of an addiction right away. It's been with you for so long, and I knew that it was the last time. I could feel it sort of floating away, and it was almost like I had to get it out of my system. It's a terrible feeling to have, to be like, I know I have to do this one last time, but I did, and I didn't know it. Like I was just all just like remnant feelings, right? Like I didn't make this.
Looking back, you understand.
Back. Yeah, I understand. But you're in the thick of it when you're in it. But yeah, so I was living on cash. I wasn't not on credit. You have to change everything about your life. I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people, is they don't want to change anything.
Right. We all want to be fabulously wealthy without
any
doing the hard work that might have to happen to get there.
I'm just watching this Dave Ramsey video. It's got like millions of views about this couple making like 150, 200 grand a year, and they're like $1 million in credit card debt or something. And
common story.
If I thought,
honestly,
it's too common. Yeah, you're right. The more money you make, sometimes the harder you fall. I just can't imagine getting to that point, knowing what I know now. I don't have debt. I don't have any debts. I saved up tons of money. I don't buy things that I don't have money for, right? I don't need a lot anymore. You learn what's important. You learn and then you learn that there's other ways to make money. I wish I would have known about side hustles I never had the capacity with the ADD I to do more than my one job. Like I barely could do that. So it's like a whole new world opened up for that too, to be able to make money on the side. The money management part of it is what really sort of changed. And then I started focusing on looking at investments and investing and what's that about and fees. And then, Wealthsimple started popping up. But that was after I was done with the gambling.
The whole world of robo-advisors has changed the investment game.
That's it. Yeah. You can get in. Some of my colleagues in the personal finance space, they talk about how their first experience was like, you don't have enough to invest. You don't have enough for this or that. Well, that doesn't exist anymore, right? And also, there are conditions where you shouldn't, if you don't have enough money or you're not doing a lot of activity, you shouldn't invest in that. Like a brokerage account would have cost you tons in fees if you only bought one thing a year. Not worth it. But now you can buy stocks for free if you want to buy some stocks. There are so many options out there now that weren't there before. But I couldn't even get to there. And that's why I really focus on helping people with their basics now instead of telling them where to put their money, because we can figure that out later. I can help them put them in the right direction, but you got to figure out the basics. What money is coming in? What money is going out? The thing that I had to do because I filed for bankruptcy, basically, I think everyone should do. And then if you have extra money, it doesn't mean you should just spend it like a crazy person on things you maybe don't need. Think about what is the purpose of money for you? What do you want to do in the future? Would you love to be free of responsibility to a job? Would you want to be able to go wherever you want? You can get this stuff if you start early. And I was a little bit delayed because of all the debt and the addiction stuff. But hey, by 35, I had about $100,000 in the bank. Yeah. So if I could do that after being $40,000 in debt and being hopeless, well, then anybody could do it, and it just takes time.
I think that's probably a good place to wrap it. This is a very hard job, Beau. You didn't tell me. You make it look so effortless here, asking questions in this basement studio here in the Hammer, as we are. But
Hammertown.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with all of us. I think it's really inspirational, and it really informs the work that you're able to do with people, because you really have been there. And when things aren't going well financially, it's easy to feel embarrassed or to want to hide it, or it's stressful to even look at it, so you don't even want to think about it. But your story shows how you can be in a really, really bad place and turn it around pretty quickly. And that's why I think a lot of people want to work with you for coaching, and why you have so much value to share with people. So thank you for telling us all about it.
Well, awesome. Thanks so much. So that's episode 76. I figured after 75 episodes, it's about time I tell my story on the podcast. Big thanks to my wife, Kaila, for agreeing to be the host for this episode. Sure, I could have just done a solo episode, but I wanted it to be an interview because I really believe that interaction between host and guest makes for a better podcast. And I think Kaila did a great job. Also, thanks to our new baby boy, Henry, born on February 1st, for only interrupting us once. If you listen closely at around 20 minutes, you can hear him crying in the background. Now that Henry's a few months old, I'm back in the swing of things and creating new weekly episodes. I also finally launched my Patreon page. So Patreon is a site that helps creators like myself get paid for the things we create. So if you like listening to the podcast every week and you think that it adds value to your life, you can show your support by paying me as little as $2 per episode. And you only pay if I actually publish an episode, so the more patrons I have, the more motivation I have to continue to find great guests to be on every week. Or I don't get paid. I really like this patron concept because it's only a few bucks a week for you, which doesn't make much of a difference to your budget, but the cost of one large coffee per week. But if 100 listeners give $2 per episode, that makes a huge difference to me. And there are different rewards the more you give. For example, if you give $200 per episode, which I agree is an insane amount of money, I will personally fly to your house, interview you for the podcast, and bake you a pie. Maybe it's crazy to even have this listed as a reward level, but if you build it, they will come, right? So head to patreon.com/Beau Humphreys if you think you might want to be a patron of the show. There are also links to the page in the show notes for every episode. Otherwise, I'm a personal finance coach if you need a little push to take charge of your personal finances, and I'm a QuickBooks Online Platinum Pro advisor if you want to learn how to do your own bookkeeping for your small business. Send an email to beau@beauhumphreys.com if you want to know more about that. That's it for me and Kaila and baby Henry. I'll be back next week with Sejal Patel, founder and CEO of Sage L, Wisdom, Wellness, and Wealth for Women.